Delta Force, a game I've heard a lot of talk about in recent weeks, and to be quite honest, I wasn't sure if it was a game I would enjoy. My initial instinct was to write it off, but then I found out that it was free. I figured it wouldn't be fair to judge it without giving it a fair shot, so I decided to see what all the fuss was about. I've only played this for the first time this weekend, so I haven't been following the game closely, and there's probably a whole lot I'm missing. But in this video, I'll be sharing my thoughts, the good, the bad, and the ugly, based on the couple of hours I spent with it. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the channel. As I mentioned in the intro, Delta Force wasn't exactly on my radar. I initially didn't think it was my type of game, and I imagined it would be a chaotic sweatfest with players running around recklessly, ignoring teamwork and tactics. And whilst it certainly delivers on that front, I must say I was actually pleasantly surprised by what else the game had to offer. The game itself has three main modes. Warfare, a PvP mode with 64 players in a massive lobby. In this mode, players fight over a large scale map, capturing zones in a bid to dominate the other team. It's intense with plenty of action, and certainly not for the faint of heart. Operations, a loot and scoop PvP-VE mode, where players are given tasks or quests to complete within a 30-minute window. The goal is to extract back to base with all your precious loot, which you can use to upgrade weapons, armour, gear, and your hideout/base. Finally, campaign mode, a single player immersive story-driven campaign that is still currently in progress, with the current storyline based around the Black Hawk Down events, adding a more narrative-focused experience to the game. Okay, so let's take a look into Warfare mode, and I'll be upfront, it's just not my thing. There's so much about this gameplay style that I really don't enjoy. However, if you are someone who's into fast-paced, chaotic, run-and-gun action, like what you'd find in Battlefield or Call of Duty, you'll likely love this mode. But for those of us who prefer slower, more methodical and tactical gameplay, you're probably in for a bit of a disappointment. As I mentioned earlier, the mode itself features a 64 player lobby set on a large scale map where teams fight to control zones. It's reminiscent of Battlefield's operations mode. There are 4 classes to choose from, each customizable as you level up, comprising of marksman, support, assault and engineer. And if you prefer to keep your boots off the ground, you do have the option to hop into vehicles. Now for my main gripe, the time to kill mechanics. This is something that really gets under my skin. It's one of the primary reasons I actually avoid these kinds of games. You can unload an entire clip into someone, only to break their armour, reload and then get sniped by another player. It's frustrating and it feels like there's no room for tactical play when the action is this fast and unforgiving. Another issue I found was the lack of teamwork. Whilst an occasional medic might revive you, more often than not I was left to bleed out in a pool of my own blood whilst I begrudgingly opened the redeploy menu. Also, the futuristic gadgets are a bit much. Take the overload perk for example for the assault class. It lets you run at the speed of shit off a shovel and it feels like you're running a million miles an hour. There are also others that I honestly couldn't even tell you what they do, to be honest, and I think that it's all just a bit of a distraction from the core gameplay in my opinion. On more of a technical note, I did experience some high ping issues. Even though the server was in the Oceania region, at first I thought it was just my connection, but the guys I was playing with also experienced the same thing. I'm not going to hold this against the game for the time being, as it could have just been a server issue, but it would be interesting to hear your thoughts in the comments as to whether you've had similar issues. But that's enough of the complaints, it's not all bad. The graphics I found for a free game were surprisingly impressive, and I was getting a steady 120 FPS, which made the experience smoother than expected. The weapon customization is another highlight, and I think it's done exceptionally well. I'll dive deeper into this when I cover operations. The level of detail and options available for customizing your loadout really adds depth to the gameplay. Lastly, I have to admit that the inclusion of vehicles such as ATVs, assault vehicles and heavy firepower vehicles adds a nice variety to the game and makes things much more interesting. As for things I'd like to see in the future, improved server stability is at the top of my list, if the ping issues I encountered are frequent issues. Additionally, I'd love to see more emphasis on teamwork, as well as the ability to disable or customize the HUD. Personally, I prefer a more immersive experience and enjoy removing crosshairs and HUD elements when possible. I think this would add a cool layer of challenge for players who enjoy a less intrusive UI. So, in summary, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that if you're an older gamer like myself, Warfare mode probably isn't going to be your thing. But for younger gamers or those just getting into FPS games, it's a solid arcade-like experience, and I think with a few friends it would be a lot of fun. Okay, so you've heard me complain a lot about Warfare mode, but what about Operations? Well, you'll be pleased to know that I actually really enjoyed this mode. Whilst it might seem like a complete rip-off of Escape from Tarkov, it's much easier and somewhat more casual, making it a much more forgiving experience, especially for people like me who are latecomers to Tarkov and essentially feel like they've been left in the dust. The concept is quite similar. You can choose to play solo or with friends, and you'll drop into a random part of the map with quests assigned by departments, which are essentially the equivalent of Tarkov's vendors. You can sell looted items to upgrade your weapons, buy better armor, and even upgrade your base, which provides various perks like ammo production. There are still some of the minor annoyances present as I mentioned earlier, like the time to kill for example, but overall I found this a far more enjoyable experience. It's definitely better suited for players or gamers who might not have the time to invest in more hardcore titles like Tarkov or Grey Zone Warfare, and it's also perfect for newcomers to the loot and scoot genre who want to dip their toes into the style without committing to something that requires such a steep learning curve. The fact that it's a free to play game is a huge plus. It gives you the chance to try before you buy, which is a massive win in my book. Why spend $50+ on a game that you might not enjoy when you can try this for free? One aspect that really impressed me was the weapon customization. The level of detail is insane, from the various attachments to fine tuning zoom distances on sights. Surprisingly, even with all these options, it doesn't feel overwhelming. I've experienced games where it's taken me literally 20 minutes to figure out how to attach a simple red dot sight, but here, the customization menu is intuitive and accessible. One small change I'd love to see, however, is an increase in squad size. Right now, the maximum squad size is 3, but I'd love to see it get bumped up to 4, allowing players to fully utilise every class in the squad. It's just a minor gripe, but it would be a nice improvement. And lastly, I don't know much about the Season Pass, but one thing I really dislike is the potential for pay-to-win features. From what I've gathered through some quick research, any microtransactions within the game appear to be purely cosmetic, which is a relief. If that's true, I hope it stays that way as I'm not a fan of pay-to-win schemes. So overall, Operations Mode gets a thumbs up from me, and I can definitely see myself continuing to enjoy it. Lastly, but certainly not least, let's talk about the campaign mode. While it's not available yet, it's set to release in January. I'm really excited that more games are bringing back these single player campaigns. It's a refreshing change to step away from the online modes and immerse yourself in a good story for a while. I'll play the full trailer for you at the end, but my first impressions have genuinely excited me for this update. It looks as if it's going to play very differently from the online modes, and the campaign is inspired by the 2001 film Black Hawk Down, which, if you haven't seen the movie, is a great movie and I highly recommend checking it out. So overall, in summary, for a free game, it certainly has its issues, but I do think that it ranks among the best, if not the best, free FPS games of 2024. Of course, if you do disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments below. That's all for now. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And now I'll leave you with the trailer as promised. Remember to keep it crispy, and I'll see you next time.